Let's talk turkey about special education. This is an area that can cause a great deal of angst for administrators if it's not well understood and if people overreact. Now, I want to start by making it very clear that to me, special education is one of the things that makes the United States system of education so much better than most of the rest of the world. We literally try to educate every student. Most countries do not do that. And we put great effort into that. And I can tell you from past experience as a superintendent and as a principal, there's no better feeling than seeing some student who has struggled and struggled and struggled succeed and find success through any program, but particularly through special education. So all of that said, I want to make it very clear that although there are legal issues around special education and it's becoming more and more contested, I am a strong supporter of special education and firmly believe that we have an obligation and both a legal and an ethical and a moral obligation to do the very best we can for all of these students. So let's talk specifically now about suspending these students. Now that I've talked about trying to educate them, what do you do if they get in trouble? Question always comes up, well, can you suspend a special education student? Yes, you can. There's nothing illegal about that. Now, a suspension is generally a time that a student is out of school for less than 10 days. Now, 10 is a magic number here in special education. You cannot suspend a special education student, for more than 10 days, except in some circumstances. But let's stick with the 10 days here for a little bit. Now, that is not 10 days at a time. That is 10 days accumulative throughout the year. Now, can you go over that? Yeah, sometimes. The criteria is really gray, but the terminology is pretty straightforward. You cannot use suspension as a pattern of suspension to exclude a student from your school who is involved in special education. Let me say that again. You cannot use a pattern of suspension to exclude a special education student from your school. What constitutes a pattern? That's up to a judge. All of these questions are up to a judge. So the rule of thumb, though, is once you start approaching 6 days, 7 days, even 8 days of accumulated suspension, it's time to put your IEP team together. Because once you cross that 10th day, go more than 10, or if you want to suspend for more than 10, period, it constitutes what we call a change of placement. A change of placement can only be done through the IEP process. So, once you get up past 6 days, 7 days, it's time to call your IEP team together and discuss whether the placement is appropriate. And you have to look at that very seriously. Have we put this person in a place where they can succeed? Least restrictive environment is the standard. Now, a least restrictive environment is a continuum that starts with the regular classroom, like every other student. However, that continuum can work all the way up to a one-on-one person or one-on-one instructor in a totally separate environment, and everything in between. But bear in mind, it is a continuum. So, can you suspend them? Yes, you can. As you go over 10 days, it becomes a change of placement. The only one that can change placement is the IEP team. So, don't go over the 10 days. Also, continuously ask yourself, as an administrator, am I using suspension in this case to avoid a deeper issue with the student? You have to keep asking yourself that. I believe that the key to success as an administrator is introspection and looking at your own motives in your decisions.